Well, we're back again together. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So, anyways, as the screen tells you, we're going to talk about the Mongol Empire today. Pretty wicked awesome. Um, so, everybody knows the man, the myth, the legend, Genghis Khan. And he was born around 1162. All right. Um, in the steppe lands of Central Asia. Remember, that's that trading area between China and uh, Persia and all that that goes above India that nobody except these tough people lived there and grazed their animals. Now, Genghis Khan was known as Temujin, and when he was just a boy, his father was killed. Mongols were very tribal, and the relationship between tribes and clans and that were super important to the political life. And so what's going to happen is his father is killed, he gets captured, he escapes, he's on the run all the time. He learns a ton of political as well as military skills that are going to serve him as he gets older. Um, so he organizes, kills his rivals, does some things, and he gets a ton of these clans together and gets them to uh, pledge kind of allegiance to him. And at that point, Temujin becomes Genghis Khan. Um, and he now is in charge of all the Mongol tribes. And this is going to give him a huge um, military advantage as he looks to start to expand and conquer all over the place. Because up until this point, you know, they were some bad dudes, these Mongols, when it came to fighting in that. But they all just stayed within their own clans, and if anything, they really kind of fought each other, or they would raid, like China or a city in China, or a place in um, Persia or something like that. But nobody ever really unified them all into a big enough empire or clan to where they could take on entire empires. So um, they were awesome on horses. They could ride, shoot an arrow, um, all at the same time. No hands, all that kind of stuff. And they were, like I said, they were bad, bad dudes. They were tough as nails, and they could do some damage. Um, Mongol women were obviously very tough, and there's a lot more equality within the Mongol ranks, um, just like in Sparta, because of this emphasis on military and the men and the women having to be responsible as well for the well-being of society. Um, Genghis Khan first looked to take over China, and he got in there and he learned some things about laying siege to the cities, and because to actually conquer a place was not their thing. They liked to go in, raid, take what they needed, and then take off. But to actually stick around, it wasn't their thing. But the one thing that they were tremendously good at, which is going to serve them so well, is that they didn't have pride. They said, listen, this isn't our game. We don't know how to do this. Teach us. And they learned from people. Once they conquered everywhere, they didn't know how to run a government or anything. So what did they do? They brought in people that did know how to do things. And so they were always willing to learn and always willing to move people around to put them in positions that they could help them. Uh, so, obviously we've heard of the Mongols and Genghis Khan being, ruthless and all that kind of stuff that, to a point to where uh, stories of him killing every adult male, no taller than an axe. They put an axe up, and if you were taller than the axe, they killed you. If you were shorter, well, they put you into slavery. And entire villages burned, all this kind of stuff if you crossed them. So they were ruthless. Um, but they could also be very generous. Some of the things that you will read about them in the laws, I mean, it's almost like stuff that your kindergarten teacher would tell you. Be kind and share, and obviously with this, if people surrendered and were good and like, hey, we don't want any trouble with you guys, they often included them in their armies and gave them positions of power and helped let them run the government. So it's a very unique culture that the Mongols were. Now, so then what's going to happen is this is a picture of Kublai Khan, all right? And he is going to be his grandson that is going to help to maintain his empire in China after Genghis Khan dies. But when people were conquered, if they didn't fight back and they were like, hey, happy you're here, the Mongols were pretty good to them. Listen, you can worship whatever you want, keep your traditions, your culture, all that kind of stuff. Just be cool in the gang. And if you're cool in the gang, the Mongols were cool in the gang. And so now you can see that this is the extent of the Mongol Empire. I mean, what Genghis Khan was able to do in 25 years, he conquered an area of land that was larger than the Roman Empire and did it in a time where it took Rome 400 years to conquer the empire they did, and he did his in like 30 years. So absolutely amazing what Genghis Khan was able to do. So then once he dies, though, his grandsons and sons take over and kind of, like Alexander the Great, divided up the empire into 4 parts. All right. And you can see these colored parts here. The purple is the Great Khan, and that's where Kublai Khan is in China. The Chagatai is the dark green, and that's kind of like still in the Central Eurasia, kind of like their normal homeland. This green part is the Persian empires that were conquered, or the Muslim empires at the time, and so that's called the Ilkhanate of Persia, and very Muslim. They adopted the Islamic religion there and all that, still tied with it. And then up here, getting into Russia and Eastern Europe, is called the Golden Horde. And those were the 4 main khanates left after Genghis Khan died. All conquered lands were allowed to continue their own lifestyles, like we talked about. Religions. Kublai Khan in China greatly admired Buddhism, adopted Buddhism, allowed a lot of Buddhist temples to be created there. So very important there. Obviously, the Ilkhanate of Persia, they adopted and enforced Islam. So super, super important stuff as far as religion goes. The Mongols were very tolerant. They helped to revitalize the Silk Roads. They were kind of going by the wayside, especially as shipping was improving. A lot of places wanted to get in their boats and carry that kind of stuff around and avoid the middleman. And as a result of the Pax Mongolia, where it's this Mongol peace throughout the empire, the trade routes became super safe, and they kind of revitalized them. The only problem with that is, as we'll see, is that we're going to get back to spreading diseases. Most of the stuff traveling along the Silk Roads were still luxury goods, but it did become safer to transfer these goods around. So cultural exchanges, again, Silk Roads are still the Silk Roads. Windmills, gunpowder, paper, food, all of that kind of stuff is being transferred all the way from China to Europe and in between. There is the little flea that is, whenever you see this guy, it always kind of represents the bubonic plague, or the black plague that is going to pretty much devastate China, Europe, and North Africa. And with a kill rate of, gosh, in some places up to like 75, 80%. But normally it was right around 50% of the entire population was gonzo when this started to spread. This is Kublai Khan, like we talked about. He is going to be in charge of the Great Khanate in China. He is going to, the Mongol dynasty in China, it's going to go Su Tang Song, the Yuan dynasty, which is the Mongol dynasty, is going to then take over. He expanded it greatly. Kublai Khan feared that the Mongol culture would be absorbed into other Chinese cultures, so he reserved the highest position in the government and the military for the Mongols or non-Chinese. He didn't allow them to intermarry with the Chinese. He put the Chinese at the bottom of the social ladder, and the people that he brought in, like Persian administrators, government officials, Europeans, all that kind of stuff that he brought in, he put them as higher status than the Chinese. City capital is at Beijing. A ton of Arab architects, and like we said, this is what he called the Yuan dynasty. Marco Polo stayed at his palace for like 17 years, wrote a book, a description of the world, and as he went back to Italy, he was imprisoned by one of the rival city-states in Italy, but his book got published, and this is like opened the eyes up to the rest of Europe, like, oh my gosh, this is China, like how cool is that? And really had people from Europe and the Middle East looking to get to China and set up shop, open up businesses there, spread their religions, that kind of stuff. You can see Pope sent Christian priests to Beijing, Muslims set up communities in China, and obviously Chinese products like gunpowder, porcelain, and playing cards were brought back to Europe. Kublai Khan in 1294 died, and then so did the empire start to collapse with it. The most important factor that led to the fall of the Mongols was probably the division of the empire into regional hordes. You know, they still had good communication because they were all Mongols, but you get also the plague that happens and wiping out so much of the population. Just everything kind of fell apart. You can see there's some of these issues that happened, and so as the Chinese saw a chance to take over and kick the Mongols out, they definitely went for it. Lasting impacts of Mongol rule, obviously the Silk Road, the cultural ideas with the religions, and obviously the spread of the bubonic plague was all kind of looped into that. And then as we get into our next unit, you'll see that the Russian isolation was there, and Russia, because of being part of the Golden Horde, is going to develop separately outside of Europe and just be different. So with that being said, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya. No, you're